morning. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'd like to welcome you to the Keene Unitarian Universalist Church, or KUUC as many of us call it. I've been a member, a friend of this church since the late 90s. And since I found this spiritual community, I've been involved in a lot of different activities. I'm currently on the worship committee and sing in the choir. Today, our minister, Rowan Van Ness, is away from the pulpit. She's on maternity leave, and we expect to have her back February 2nd, counting the days. Today, we're so grateful to have Reverend Daniel Frye as our guest speaker or worship leader. If you're new with us today, you're especially welcome. Please sign our guest book at the front of the sanctuary, and please come and meet some wonderful people at coffee hour in our parish hall, through the doors to my right. Each week we designate an ambassador to welcome newcomers and to answer any questions you may have. This week, our ambassador is Carrie Fisegli, right over here. Now I'd like to invite you to look at the back of the order of service and recite with me KUUC's mission statement. The people of KUUC are committed to actively creating compassionate community and working for a fair and peaceful world. And there are a few upcoming events that might interest you, and I just want to especially point out that the green sale is next weekend, Friday night and all day Saturday, and I'm sure there's hours you can sign up for. You can help decorate wreaths. It's our major fundraiser, and we really need your help to pull it off. Please silence your cell phones, but you do not have to silence your children, whose noises are always welcome in our sanctuary. Today I know a lot of the older kids have gone to Goose Pond. Once again I say welcome. May you find joy in this hour, a message worth hearing, and many good reasons to join us again. Oh, and our first hymn today is hymn number 1024. Oh, no, Dan is doing that. I just want to make sure you know that the first hymn is 1024.
Well, good morning, Keene. How are you? I am Dan Frye, and I am so delighted to be with you today to call us to worship together in the spirit of the Unitarian Universalist Church. By way of opening words, I'd like to offer some language that is occasionally used as a chalice lighting opening itself. But I think it expands beyond what a chalice lighting traditionally offers and really gets us set to open our minds to the spirit of life, the spirit of hope, the spirit of belief that we all look to in our own unique ways, through our own lenses, to find our own understanding of truth. Come into the circle of love and justice. Come into the communion of caring and wholeness. Come, and you shall know peace and joy. Let this flame be to us a symbol of the wholeness we seek, its brightness dispelling gloom, lighting a path to faith and hope, its glow reminding us of the sacred bonds which link us to all people, its radiance calling us to fulfill our destiny, to cast the light of freedom, justice, and peace upon all the world. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your life's journey, come, let us worship together. And now, as our chalice is being lit, please join me in our chalice lighting words. We kindle this flame to remind us those, the light, truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment. The chalice, of course, is our church's symbol of faith and trust, and is the symbol that makes Unitarianism well known to many in this world. And now for our welcoming hymn, in your gray hymnal number 124, we will sing When the Spirit Says Do. Our music will be led this morning by Kim Clark, and I invite you to rise in body or spirit.
And it is actually the 1024 in the teal hymnal. There was a typo. So it's teal today. You gotta do when the Spirit says do. You gotta do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you gotta do. Oh Lord, you gotta do when the Spirit says do. 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 You gotta dancing when the Spirit says sing. You gotta sing when the Spirit says sing. When the Spirit says sing, you gotta sing. Oh Lord, you gotta sing when the Spirit says sing. 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 Dance. You gotta dance when the Spirit says dance. You gotta dance when the Spirit says dance. When the Spirit says dance, you gotta dance. Oh Lord, you gotta dance when the Spirit says says laugh. Spirit 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 says laugh. Shout. You gotta shout when the Spirit says shout. You gotta shout when the Spirit says shout. When the Spirit says shout, you gotta shout. Oh Lord, you gotta shout when the Spirit says shout. 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 And do. You gotta do when the Spirit says do. You gotta do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you gotta do. Oh Lord, you gotta do when the Spirit says do. 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 Spirit says do.
Well, thank you, everyone. That's a song that'll wake you up, right? A song not often sung in UU circles, but sometimes, and I think given our theme today of civil rights, social justice, and individual transformation, that it's a song that appropriately gets our blood flowing and has us come to appreciate what we are all about in the UU community. I'm now going to turn to a segment of our service that is very often a part of a UU service, and it's our Time for All Ages. I'm aware that the older youth in your congregation are out on a field trip today, which will expose them to nature and all of its holy and creative value, and I think that's wonderful. If there are younger children here, I'm going to do this piece from the pulpit, so you can listen to this story with your family or your parents from where you are. And if you're young at heart, I hope this story also brings you a message that is meaningful. Today's service primarily, before I get started, is somewhat autobiographical. Ordinarily, when I do a service, I put a lot of effort into providing a service that addresses some aspect of our Unitarian theology. But I was recently asked to give some consideration to the topic of civil rights and social justice, informed through my own life experience. And so today's message is very much autobiographical, and yet I don't want it to be perceived as the Dan Frye hour so much as I think some of my life experiences parallel what we believe in the UU community about social justice and the like. growing up different. I was born in a small family, a conventional core family with a mother and a father, one younger sibling, a sister, and myself. Everyone in our family living in Texas had no disabilities except their oldest son, me. My parents had no knowledge of how to deal with a blind child. They had no background or experience. They had no understanding of blindness at all. But they understood several things intuitively. They understood that, as far as they knew, blind people needed to be trained to be responsible, productive, engaged members of society. Their theory was, unless they were given to believe anything to the contrary, that I should be able to do everything that my younger sister could do, that I should have errands around the house, that I should have expectations set of me in terms of being the older brother, and that I should learn to be self-sufficient. Not knowing what blindness skills I would need, they originally sent me to the residential school for the blind in Texas, in Austin. Our family lived in Azle, Texas, a suburb of Dallas and Fort Worth, which was about 200 miles away from Austin. And my family, wanting me to get the blindness skills I needed, decided to uproot themselves and move to an outskirts of Austin so that I didn't just come home once a semester at Christmas time and then again at the end of the school year, but that they would live close enough that they could come and collect me on Friday afternoons and bring me back to the dormitory on Sunday evenings. In that way, they felt they had compromised and not sent me away at such a young age for an extended period of time. During those first 3 years, I had some vision. Not a lot of it, but enough to fall into the category of being legally blind. I won't spend time today talking about the nuts and bolts of what it means to be legally blind as opposed to totally blind or having low vision. Suffice to say, though, I had some vision, could read if I held a book very close to my eyes, and after a while would experience some eye fatigue. But during that time, in the late 70s, after the federal law had been passed in 75 that said that students with disabilities could be mainstreamed or enrolled into public school under federal law and were entitled to a free and appropriate public education, my parents still thought that getting blindness skills from a school for the blind would be the way to start out, and then after the first 3 years, having acquired those skills in theory, I would be mainstreamed to the public schools in Georgetown. And that's how the pattern happened. And it was after those 3 years that I came home, and my sister and I, 2 years apart in age, went to the same public school. And it's where I started to notice that I was different. Not everybody was blind. And it's where Deb started to notice. Deb is my younger sister. She started to notice that not every family had a blind person in it. We would get down to the school bus stop, and the kids would look and stare and be a little curious. They would do what children do. But it infuriated my sister. She'd say, "Take a picture, it lasts longer." And I said to Deb, we have to be patient with people. We have to be good ambassadors. We have to educate so that we don't alienate, and so that people come to understand that blindness, like being African American or being female or fulfilling any other marginalized community, that blindness is just like that. That blindness is not, particularly after you get your blindness treated to the extent that it can be, that it's not a medical condition as much as a social station in life. But Deb didn't understand that, and she said, well, they're just rude. And gradually, Deb came to see that it was important that we learned how to teach others about difference. And we did. I broke my leg in the 4th grade, my first year in public school, because I had never seen at the School for the Blind monkey bars. You know those bars that you hold your hand on and you walk across the monkey bars, and you each hand you move forward and you grab a new bar and you go across? I hadn't seen those on the playground at the School for the Blind for some reason. And so as it was described to me, the goal was I would climb up to the top of the monkey bars, and instead of hanging from them, that the challenge this particular week was to simply walk across the top of them. They told me it was an iron bridge, and that when I got to the other end, I'd come down the set of stairs. And I thought to myself, that doesn't seem to require a lot of athletic ability. It did, in the sense that at that point in life, I was small enough to fit between the bars, and so when I took my first step, I went down. My little sighted girlfriend was also our next door neighbor. And she came home that evening after school and ran into our living room, and she said, everyone in school is mad at me. And I said, why is that? And she said, because they think I didn't tell you that there were holes between each handlebar. And I said, you didn't, but it's on me to figure that out. It's not your fault. And she goes, I just assumed you knew that, and that you would manage to put your foot on each bar, and it would help you balance. And I said, I didn't realize that was the goal, but no worries. And she said, there are worries. No one's mad at you, but everybody thinks I'm a jerk. And I said, Deb, they think you're a jerk. Deb was both my girlfriend's name and my sister's name. This makes it confusing. But I said, Deb, everyone thinks you're a jerk because they have low expectations for blind people. They don't think that we should be able to do the things that everyone else does. What happened today was the product of my not having seen a given situation before, and your description was less than sufficient. But again, you should not feel responsible for what happened to me. She goes, could you write a letter to that effect? I was always regarded as a fairly formal child, but I thought in 4th grade that was a bit of an ask. But I did write her a note, and I said, people shouldn't blame Deb for my falling through the handlebars. I didn't realize they were created like that. I didn't know the goal was to balance. I thought the goal was just to walk across an iron bridge that was solid. She said, "This will help, I think." I said, "Well, I'm glad." And I said, "Deb, you have to understand that if you're going to be my girlfriend, there are going to be people who look at you differently, who think that you are responsible for me, but you're not. You're my partner, not my caregiver." She goes, "I know, but people seem to think I am." And I said, "That's going to be one of the challenges of being in a friendship like ours. But we'll make it through. Everybody's different. The world is different. And in the absence of difference, we wouldn't have a very exciting place to live. So think of yourself as part of a big, beautiful, diverse mosaic. And think of me as a flower currently unable to stand up." Thank you very much. And ordinarily, I understand we would process the children to their classrooms, but that we're skipping that this morning. Is that correct? Not going to go. So we're moving on? Okay. So with that, I will turn for comments about the offering this service over again to Andrea for a moment.
Now is the time for our offering. If you're joining us for the first time, please feel free to let the basket pass you by, as your presence here is a gift. Give to the church that has meant so much to you, for the church that has meant so much to those who came before you, and for the church that will mean so much to people you will never know. Give what you will, for you are generous people. And today our offering by Rich Clark, our offertory, is "The Desert and the Parched Land." Please join me in the words in your order of service. We dedicate these gifts in service of our mission to actively create compassionate community and work for a fair and peaceful world.
Amen. At this point, I would invite you to join me in a spirit of prayer, reflection, contemplation, or whatever term that convening with the sacred and the holy is appropriate in your life. Spirit of life, Spirit of love, God and Goddess of all names and no name at all, spark of mystery and all that is holy. We gather today in worship to honor our diverse beliefs, to celebrate the magnificence and majesty of this amazing earth which we are privileged to inhabit, and to do our part to create beloved community in our part of the world. We ask globally that your guiding spirit bring peace to the tumultuous world in which we live. We petition that suffering, wherever it may be found, and from whatever source it may come, be tempered or entirely ceased. And we come ready to do our part to perpetuate the characteristics of the beloved community across our land. And closer to home, we seek comfort for our family, friends, and neighbors who may experience suffering of all types, from illness to hardship, from loneliness to loving integration, and from loss to location. In short, we ask that we all, and all of our unidentified needs, enjoy your blessing and attention. Spirit of life, Spirit of love, we close this morning mindful of our flawed humanity, aware of our individual shortcomings and deficiencies, and with an earnest hope that with your counsel and caring, that we may realize gradual progress toward our goals of achieving our aim of becoming better human beings, representative of the values lifted up by our church and through your wisdom. Amen, Ashe, and may it be so. We now will move to our silent meditation, and I will bring us back with that, with the lifting of my hand. So please join me in silent reflection. Amen. We will have a sung response, hymn number 123 in your gray hymnals, the song of comfort to most Unitarians, Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion, blowing the wind, rising the sea, moving the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Thank you. Before we examine this morning's sermon, I'm offering a morning reading, which I think again is consistent with today's discussion of civil rights and social justice. It is taken from a book of reflections written by Reverend Teresa I. Soto. Reverend Soto graduated from Meadville Lombard Seminary, and as I understand it now, has her own congregation somewhere in the outskirts of Portland, Oregon, but for many years had service responsibilities at the UU Church in downtown Oakland, California. Reverend Soto is a minister who serves and lives in a wheelchair primarily. Her book is entitled Spilling the Light: Reflections on Meditation and Resilience. It's found at the UU National Bookstore and is published under Beacon Press. If you want more information about Spilling the Light by Teresa Soto, I invite you to look it up on the UUA website. It contains a number of readings that are transcendent and truly reflective of hardship, but then overcoming, prevailing, succeeding, and flowering into complete success and goodness with the support of the values that we acknowledge in our new six values that surround love at the center of all we do theologically. This piece is entitled, Bring Your Broken Hallelujah Here. Bring your broken hallelujah here. Bring the large one that is beyond repair. Bring the small one that's too soft to share. Bring your broken hallelujah here. I know that people have told you that before you can give, that you have to get yourself together. They overstated the value of perfection by a lot. Or they forgot. You are the gift. We all bring some broken things, songs and dreams, and long lost hopes. But here, together, we reach within. As a community, we begin again. And from the pieces we will build something new. There is work that only you can do. We wait for you. And with those words that begin with an image of something broken, but conclude with the notion that individuals ultimately have their own parts to play, whether they are the conventional ones or not, and that they all have a special role that matters. We understand where Reverend Soto wants us to believe and how she wants us to believe that coming together is possible.
I give you a time check, it's 10:43.
Thank you. And so I'll begin with my sermon, and I will abbreviate it to some extent and try not to keep you much beyond 11. But I always say to people, if you have to be somewhere and it has to be delayed, it might as well be worship. As I shared with you in the Time for All Ages, I was born into a fairly standard lower middle class nuclear family of 4. And we lived in Texas. Ultimately, we spent the first 3 years of my education living in the outskirts of Austin. I gaining my blindness skills, Deb going to school in public school, and then my transitioning to public school with her in the 4th grade. We lived a fairly uneventful and not terribly remarkable life for about 2.5 years. And then on the 6th of October, my mother was killed in a car accident where a drunk driver ran her off the road. We were brought out of school, Deb and I, taken to our father, where he explained that she had succumbed to her injuries. 2 years later, in 1980, my father passed away of a serious coronary heart attack. It was his 9th. He had some experience with this. But after 9 times, his chances were up, and Deb and I found ourselves to be orphaned. I explained to those who were there to care for us, a stepmother that my father had married after our mother died, and a few aunts and uncles, that I needed to share this news with my sister as the only remaining member of her family. And so I had Deb brought to me and explained to her that Dad was no longer with us, and that we didn't know precisely what we were going to do, but that she shouldn't worry, that we had adults around us that would help us navigate and figure out what was to be next. No one on my mother's side of the family was in a position to take us, and so Deb and I ultimately were sent to live with my paternal grandparents, my father's parents, on a tobacco farm in the low country of South Carolina. As you might imagine, coming from the suburb of the state capital of Texas to the low country of South Carolina, where our water was provided by a well, our electricity was provided by a windmill, and otherwise we were largely off the grid. My grandparents had a 4th grade education, and they certainly did not know what to do with a blind child. Like my parents, they loved me, but they were largely insulated from having to deal with my blindness because they had Mom and Dad there to manage those issues. And now they were expected to do it. We migrated to South Carolina about 5 days after my father died. My stepmother swooped in, taking advantage of my grandparents' limited education, secured our father's house and all of our property, and we had nothing except our survivor's benefits, which went to our grandparents theoretically for our care. It was a very different world. They lived in what's known as a shotgun house. They were sharecroppers responsible for growing multiple acres of tobacco for their landowner, and their profit came from what they could grow in the garden for living and from what extra time outside of the workday they could devote to any other jobs. But otherwise, they were in the fields, working, growing tobacco, storing it, putting it on for drying, and everything that's involved with this. They welcomed us with warmth, it seemed to the innocent eyes of 2 young kids. Always good to go and have some of Grandma and Grandpa's good Southern cooking. And for a week, it seemed a bit like a dream. But after the first week of living there, our grandparents sat us down and said, "Children, this is not a visit to Grandma and Grandpa's house. You're now a part of our family, and you'll have to pull your own weight." Understanding that we were lucky not to have to go to a foster home or an orphanage, we said sure. And so the first summer that we spent in the care of our grandparents were full of a number of different unique experiences. Experiences which, by and large, were traumatizing for myself and for Deb. One of the things that family members were expected to undertake was helping out in the garden. And as I said, their sharecropping responsibilities kept them busy from sun up to sundown. So any gardening work that got done between 5 in the morning and when the sun could rise, and after they had finished their day. The advantage to this was that it wasn't quite as oppressively hot. It was dark and only 90% humidity as opposed to 100% humidity. But it was dark. Deb and I got up and came out, and as eagerly as you could at pre-adolescent ages, and said, "Here we are," and our grandfather turned around and very brusquely said, "Oh, I didn't mean you, boy, go back to bed." And I said, "Oh no, Grandpa, I can help. I always have. We've figured out ways for me to team." And he said, "You'll slow us down, you'll not be productive, you don't know what to do, and we don't have time to teach you. You can help peel butter beans or shell butter beans out under the oak tree in the front lawn when we bring them to you from the field. Or if it's too hot, you can sit in proximity to the window air conditioning." I protested that wouldn't be necessary, that it wouldn't take long to show me how to find the peas to pull, that it wouldn't take long for me to learn the patterning, to learn the rows. But basically he turned on me and said, "You stay here. Your sister will do your part of the work." A 10-year-old child doesn't understand why she's getting extra work while her older brother, equally as bright and as engaging, had the privilege of sitting by the air conditioner shelling peas. It made me wonder and come to understand that some people thought that blindness mattered. A second thing that happened during that first transformative summer was that my grandfather had a custom of taking his grandchildren fishing. He took all of his grandchildren fishing. They would wake at 4 in the morning, go down to the barn, acquire the wooden boat, load it into the back of the blue rusted pickup truck, and take it down to the river and fish all day, supping on a diet of warm water and Vienna sausages. In retrospect, I'm not sure that I really yearned to do that. But at the time, it was an opportunity denied. At the time, blindness mattered. Conversation around the Sunday dining room table was also another tradition of summers at Grandma and Grandpa's house. All of his children, of course, with the exception of his son, who had just died, would come over on Sunday, and Grandma would have prepared, after we all were compelled to go the 4/10 of a mile down the dirt road that ran in front of our home to the local Southern Baptist church where, boy, you went to church. And after church, you came home to Sunday cooking. Grandpa went around the table this one Sunday and said, "What do you want to do? What do you want to do when you grow up?" One cousin said, "I want to be a fireman like my dad." Another, "I want to continue to grow tobacco, except I want to be in charge next time." Another, "I want to be a hair stylist." "Dan, what do you want to do?" "I want to be a policeman like my dad." All of a sudden, I felt this amazing blast of air, and then the slap across my face, and the directive that I not be so cocky, and that I need to be made it clear, need to had it made clear to me that blind people can't be a policeman, that you couldn't drive a car, and that if Dad hadn't made it clear to me yet, that Grandpa was going to make sure I understood what it meant to be blind. And I said, "All right, I'll not be a policeman, I'll be a lawyer." I got slapped again and told that if I were lucky, I'd be invited to go to a workshop to assemble brooms or cane chairs, or perhaps be a preacher in the Baptist church where you didn't have to have any formal education. It is somewhat ironic that as in the sunset of my career, I've moved and changed my trajectory from being a civil rights attorney and public program administrator for state and federal programs to the church, except it's not the Baptist church, and it did require some education. Finally, at the end of that first summer, my grandmother took me aside and she said, "Son, you'll have to go to the school for the blind." And I raised objection. "Grandma, I've already done the School for the Blind thing. I've acquired the skills I need. The law says I can go to public school now. I don't want to leave my only sister alone after she's just lost her mom and dad. As much as she loves living with you, she needs her brother. But they said the decisions had been made, that South Carolina was not as up to date as Texas, and that I wouldn't get the education I was hoping for if I compelled them to admit me at the local public schools. So I was sent 300 miles north, and Deb and I were largely separated except for the occasional coming home at the end of each semester. I taught her simple Braille so that I could correspond with her, but it was hard. It was hard when she wrote to me saying, "I need you to come back home. They're mean to me all the time. All I do is cook and clean and work in the garden. I feel like I'm here to be a slave." And I said, "Deb, I'm doing the best I can. I'll try to work things out." But I was only 12 years old myself. I brought this to the attention of the one mentor I had found who was an adult, the principal of the School for the Blind in South Carolina. And I said to him, "Dr. Thurman, if you go to the local public school here in Spartanburg and ask them if they will create a pilot program with the School for the Blind, I will be your pioneer academically inclined student, and I'll go to public school, but come back to the School for the Blind dorms at night, because I fear that the education I'm getting here is less than adequate. I know it because I took the science book that I have home, compared it to what my sister was reading, and she was 2 years ahead of me, although I was labeled as being in 7th grade and she in 5th. And he said, "Dan, I think we could do that." And we did it. Gradually, I decided to try and find reasons not to go home, even on the occasions that I could, because just as that first summer I was taught to have low expectations about blind people, it was the same lesson being taught again and again when I would go home. And so in retrospect, one of the advantages of going to the School for the Blind in South Carolina was that I found a community of blind people, the Civil Rights Organization of the Blind, the National Federation of the Blind. These blind peers, mostly adults, because I was a fairly serious student at 14, they said to me, "We don't want you to believe what your grandparents have told you. Your aspirations, your goals are reasonable. You do not have to end up alone. You do not have to end up in a workshop. You can be a lawyer. It's not a terribly ambitious goal, but you can do it. And you can travel, and you can marry, and you can get a mortgage and have a visa, and you can do everything else that everyone else can. Don't believe the negative messages that your grandparents are giving you. They have been conditioned by the society in which they have grown up to understand what they believe blind people can achieve. They aren't intending to be mean. They're telling you what they know by what they've seen on TV and read in books and have had affirmed in every public environment that they've learned about blindness. But you can succeed, and you can imagine what an appealing prospect it was to stay over on the weekends and go to the homes of these encouraging successful blind adults who were engineers, mechanical engineers, chemical engineers, a PhD in psychology, a PhD in biology, a PhD in water management. And then there were people who were less successful, but they were school teachers. In fact, one was a mathematics school teacher who learned to take some technology and produce equations which then would show up on a whiteboard comparable to a chalkboard except probably better written. And he taught class. And everyone said, he won't succeed. He doesn't know where the kids are. They'll make a mockery of him. But he had a seating chart, and he listened well, and he cultivated respect for himself by helping each kid with their own individual needs. And people looked up to Mr. Tom as one of the best math teachers in town. I went to the courts, secured emancipation from my grandparents, arranged to get a job from the School for the Blind as the evening switchboard operator, and earned some money so that I could support myself and pay for a dorm room for the weekends and at night. But I couldn't figure out how to get Deb out of the care of my grandparents. Some things were beyond my control until finally she simply acted out enough that she was sent to live with one of my aunts, who also left her when she was transferred in the military and Deb was made a ward of the state. After 10 years, we found one another, I having acquired an education with an undergraduate degree in history and a degree in law, and Deb having experienced what many kids who fall through the social work cracks in our society experience, which was just enough to keep her clothed and fed and met minimum standards of state care. But no one helped her organize college or think about it. And as it developed, Deb's aptitude was not college bound. We finally found one another as I was graduating from law school. And I have been working hard to rehabilitate that relationship for years. Having graduated from law school, I was all excited. I was now going to find a job as an attorney, and I was going to change the world. But one more blindness-oriented thing happened. I started putting out resumes. I had done well in law school. I won't be disingenuous with you and tell you that I was top of the class or order of the coif or on law review, but I was top third, and so should have easily secured a job. I spent 3 years looking for my first job for which I was qualified. And during that 3 years, I received more than 250 rejection letters saying what an inspiration you were during that interview. But we just couldn't figure out how you'd be able to deal with some of the issues that lawyers have to deal with. And I came to the understanding that even if the law said employers weren't allowed to ask me about how I could do things, that if I wasn't really clear, and if I failed to extend an open invitation to people that said, you can ask me anything about blindness, no bars, if you leave with questions about what I can do, what my capacity is, you won't hire me. So ask me what you want to know. But for 3 years, I had no job. But I had a bunch of education and a lot of college debt. And during those 3 years, my favorite rejection letter, just to add a little bit of levity to our story, began, "Dear Ms. Ash." You see the cover letters that they were sending out to those that were not invited to have a job were pretty much the same, except for the salutation, which they apparently neglected to change, and I presume that Ms. Ash was addressed as Mr. Frye somewhere in the world. I will pull this to a close by saying that I ultimately did find employment, found a marriage, and managed to get my first job, one that was with the Social Security Administration. I was overqualified for the job, but I accepted it. I learned that giving back to my community was the responsibility I had, given the love and care and attention that I found from the civil rights community. I learned that when I was taken to Washington, D.C. under the care and attention of accomplished blind adults and taught about the legislative process and taken out to fancy dinners that a poor kid couldn't imagine why there would be 4 forks and 4 knives and 4 spoons at this table, but I had someone lean over and say, "The salad fork is the furthest out to your left." These weren't things that a blind person was supposed to know. We weren't supposed to operate in those rarefied environments, but in fact, there was no reason we shouldn't have been able to, and I was able to, because I was given opportunity to benefit from the collective action of blind people. Our theology in the Unitarian Universalist Church, the very first principle that we'll all know by heart, is that each of us are worthy of dignity and respect, and that we all matter as individual human beings, that we are connected interdependently with the broader world, animals, nature, the earth, and one another. But ultimately, we are all worthy. I came to understand this. My sister came to understand this after years without guidance and clarity. And ultimately, I decided that the best way I could give back was to undertake the civil rights work of an attorney. Now, because I thought it was critical that I fit into the broader community, my first areas of practice were in non-disability related fields. I did criminal defense work. I did domestic relations work, which is just a fancy euphemism for handling divorces. But then I turned to my passion and applied my legal capacity to discrimination, hoping that I could make sure that the next generation of blind people wouldn't have to walk through the 3-year metaphorical desert of unemployment. And although I don't know that I've achieved that, I have made sure that many don't have to walk through that metaphorical desert of unemployment. I've also worked as a civil rights attorney when the state called up by a well-meaning sighted person and has checked on a blind couple who just had their own child. The nurse noted that the child was not nursing properly, but that is standard for a lot of new moms. But they assumed, when they saw it, that it was blindness related, not being a new parent. It took us 60 days, but we got baby Michaela back to her parents. But imagine if your children had been taken from you for no other reason than you didn't meet a certain characteristic assigned to you at birth. These kinds of things are the kinds of things that motivated me to do the work I did. I ran programs at the federal and state level to help people with disabilities and blindness find jobs. And ultimately, I stopped one day when at my UU church service, which I had gone to having experienced such a horrendous childhood at the very conservative church down the road from my grandparents' house, and learned that there are all kinds of faiths to be followed, all kinds of practices to be pursued. And I said to my wife, I need to be doing this now. I've done 30 years of civil rights work and social justice work, and now I need to do the social justice work of our church. And I know that it seems ridiculous at 54 to go back to get another graduate degree, but I think it's what's important. And she said, I'll support you in what you want to do, if that's what you think is important. And I did. And having recently graduated from seminary and have now been credentialed as a UU minister within the church, I enter the search process this coming December with the hope that I will be called by a congregation by the end of the search process in March. I want to reaffirm before I close, and close late, I realize, that I understand that being an individual that can identify and search for his own understanding of truth is the most spiritually liberating thing we can do as human beings. And it's the one thing that our church absolutely believes and indulges. We are a church where difference is not tolerated, but is in fact embraced. As we come to the end of my service, I offer you this one thought. Blind people, like every other person, just are people who don't have vision. We represent the full diversity of humanity, from intellect to size to attractiveness to every other characteristic. Some of us are very friendly, some of us are not. Some of us are funny, others less so. We are, in fact, a microcosm of the broader world. But we are a good example of what it means to be different. And it is in this church, nationally, that I have had it taught to me that difference need not be equated with delay or separation. Please rise in body or spirit as this represents the sermon's conclusion. May it be so, ashe and amen. And join in our final hymn in your Till hymnal 1017, Building a New Way.
our every need. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. Start with love, that is the seed. We can feed our every need. Peace and freedom is our cry.
Peace and freedom
Is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Without these, the world will die. Peace and freedom is our cry.
Thank you. As the person responsible for extinguishing the chalice comes forth and does that, please join me in the language seen in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of His truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and share with the world until we are together again. Friends, by way of benediction, let me offer these quick thoughts. Go out into the world in peace. Go live in joy. Be well. Be curious. Be kind. Honor mystery and acknowledge and respect the mystery of awe. Acknowledge and embrace the sacred. And understand that it's okay that there are things we don't know entirely. May faith in the Spirit of life and hope for the community of earth and the love of the light in each other be ours now and in all the days to come. Finally, always live the way of love. Thank you very much. And our post